Hello everyone. So today we'll be talking about dynamic apps using React.js. So before we start, let me introduce myself. So I am Chirag Goel, UI engineer at Flipkart. So before we dive into dynamic apps, let's talk about any of the web app, right? So generally web apps consist of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So what are these? Let's talk about from 360 view. How our web apps generally look like. Talking about the HTML, so it's a skeleton basically. So it is known or understand by the browser what need to be placed, where need to be placed, and how it will look like. So all of these things will is taken care by browser, and internally it creates a DOM tree and all those things in order to render this. Let's not dive into that. So talking about, like, generally web app does not look such dumb, right? So it has something like appealing. So how to make it more attractive? We generally write a CSS on top of it by providing some references and make it more attractive. So considering example, you have head, you have body, you have legs, you have hand, you have different references, and you provide certain styles to those references, and it becomes attractive. Now again, our web application are again no such dump where there is no interactivity. We don't generally see a static web app, right? So we have the application where you can interact, like you can click, you can close, you can like expand. All those interaction can be done on top of it. How generally we do that? We use JavaScript in order to make it more interactive. Whenever you click, you do certain activity. Whenever you navigate, whatever you want, you can achieve all those things using JavaScript. But again, talking about an application like Facebook, it's very difficult to write so much JavaScript in your vanilla JavaScript in your application to achieve lot of stuff. Like, you have lot of state management need to be done, you have to take care of performance, you have to take care about interactivity, you have to take care of other stuff as well. So uh, okay, so how a real life application, if we talk about Facebook, looks like? So it looks like similar to this. So you have a real bot. Oh damn, it does lot of thing. Your real application does lot of thing. So it can become very easily if you implement your application using React.js. So we'll dive into what is React.js and all those things. But it becomes far easy in terms of implementing a complex application which has lot of state management, lot of heavy interaction, heavy lifting need to be done. So it is taken care by React.js, we can say. So okay, let's see what our today's agenda is. So we'll be talking about what is React. Before we start any of your new thing, we should know about it, why we should use it. We'll talking about the features provided by React.js, prerequisite if you want to start implementing something using React, what are the things which are required. Then we'll build a small Yahoo React application, and then we'll talk about core and the fundamentals of React. Okay, so what is React basically? A React is a library, a basic, simple, lightweight library which provides lot of interactivity user interface, right? And it can be built for both like web and mobile using JavaScript. So wow, it's damn good. Like, you write it once and you ship it for different operating systems, right? And then talking about, it is a open source, and it uses the component based architecture. So what is component based architecture, we can discuss in more detail further. So right now you can consider you have different sections in your page, like you have header. Inside your header you have different login, sign up, all those different sections. So each of them you can consider as a component for now. A very interesting part, it just take care of your view layer. Like, if you are aware of a MVC, model view controller architecture, in that particular architecture only the view part is managed by the React. It's a library, just to note it down. Okay, okay, we are aware of what is React and why React. So it gives you improved performance using virtual DOM. Again, hold on for a second, we'll discuss about this virtual DOM going forward. But yes, it gives out of box it does certain performance stuff using virtual DOM, and it also provides you control. So consider example, if you know certain piece of your application or certain functionality is not that performant enough, You can drill down into that, you can debug, and there are certain capabilities where you have control to manage and tweak the performance of your application. And again, it is very easy to create a dynamic application. You have to write very less, you get a lot of functionality out of box. And you generally build a usable component. You build it once and you reuse it multiple places. Consider example of a login component. So say suppose you want to provide a login component in the header. If a user is not logged in, you want to show it as a button. And if you can also provide it in any of the subscription page or any of the detail pages where you want to hide it behind, or you can say login, you want a user to be logged in, right? All of these can be done by using reusable component. And you don't have to write much, right? Your development times, your developer experience become great, right? uh, Learning curve is, yes, very small as compared to the other framework. So because reason is it is actually using a fundamental of JavaScript and HTML. If you are good enough in JavaScript and HTML, then you can easily onboard to React basically. Again, we already talk about if you have to build it once and you can ship it for Android, iOS and web in a very easy way. If you're talking about you have to ship in Android and iOS, you can use React Native basically. So again, small toppings on top of React, and you have to write the same code basically. Again, debugging tool like Chrome extension or different browser extensions are provided, where you can easily go into your application and debug where the actually root cause is. And the best part is the data flow is unidirectional. Like you have better control, you know how our data is changing, what may be the root cause of this, right? So we'll talk about how the data can change and what are the different behavior when the data changes. So these things we'll discuss about in detail. So this is basically why. So if you have to club up all of them and you have to visualize in a very simple fashion, so let's talk about the feature which it provides. So it uses JSX, JavaScript syntax extension. So what is JSX? It's a new term we haven't heard before, right? We'll discuss. Hold on, just listen to all the features, functionality which are provided out of box. We'll discuss in detail. Virtual DOM. So there is something we have heard real DOM. What is this virtual DOM? Then there's certain performance which is given out of box. One day data binding, we discussed about that, but again we'll discuss more in detail. We have certain extensions and there are debugging tools which are available to help a developer experience, right? To debug your applications very easily. Cool. So if you want to get started with creating your first React application, let's know what is the prerequisite. Actually nothing, but again you should know some fundamental, right? Programming concepts like what is function, object, array and class. So basically I'm talking about basic knowledge of JavaScript. You should be familiar with the HTML, right? And you should have a browser where you can open your application. Either you can run your application altogether online, or like you need a text editor for your local where you can actually code. And you need a node, right, where you can install certain dependencies and run your servers. Cool. So all set? Not yet. You have to grab a cup of coffee. Yeah, now we are ready. So let's see how to create a React application. So you will be creating a Yoho React, and yeah, let's use a very basic fundamental, no new thing. It's a very basic thing which we generally use, like we have used jQuery and other libraries also. So let's treat it in a very simple fashion. So what you need? So you need HTML. So in HTML you are aware, like you have head, you have body, and you can import any of the script. So we are right now importing a React script over here, you can consider. And we have to write a small JavaScript which actually bootstrap a small React application inside this reference, which is your root element, which is basically id is equal to root. This element is a root where we want to initialize our React application. Okay, it seems very simple enough. So let's see what we are going to write in game.js. So game.js, basically we are writing React DOM.render. We want to render using the React DOM API which is provided by React DOM. And then what we want to render React.create element this Yoho inside a DOM container. DOM container is nothing, as we discussed, like we want to render everything in this id is equal to root. So over here we are plain JavaScript, which is document.query selector $root. We are passing this reference. Here we want to render, and what we want to render, let's peep into this. We want to render this. What is this? It's a class. It does nothing. It basically does a simple render, and this inside this render we can see it is actually creating a react.create element. It has three parts. One is what type of element you want to render, what properties you want to pass to it, and the child of this particular element. So in this particular case, what we want to render, we want to render h1 with no style properties or anything inside that. We want a simple text as a child, which is Yahoo React. It seems too much for me, like why I need such is all these detail if we just wanted to render a small Yahoo React inside a h1 tag, right? So people aware with the normal HTML can say, oh, I can go and create this Yahoo rendering page very easily. Why I need all of them? Okay, hold on for a minute. We'll discuss about benefit of it. Okay, just to notice, we are creating a class which is extending on top of react.component. Okay, we are done. We have created a normal HTML, importing a script. We are passing importing our own script, and we are passing a reference where we want to create a React app. Okay, and here we are actually mounting this particular component inside a DOM container, which is a hash root, our ID with the root. Okay, now we will see in browser we have Yahoo React created. Let's quickly grab a view on top of it. Where are you, man? Here. So basically we can see we have created a HTML condition. We have again, yeah. So if we don't want to do all of them, right? If we want to do a simple thing like we used to do, like write a HTML tag and get my job done, right? So let's use JSX for that. So instead of using plain JavaScript, we will be also utilizing the JSX fundamental over here. So everything remains on the left, remains the same. On the right hand side, you can see where we were creating a reference from create element and all those things. Right now we are just rendering h1 Yahoo React inside this tag. That's it, we are done. And it renders the same thing Yahoo React, and you can go into this particular link and you can see the same output will be rendered. So this is basically a JSX which we are talking about, which is extensive JavaScript syntax. Okay, we'll dive into more into this particular JSX thing. Before that, let's create your own, like, okay man, we can use it as a library, but I don't want to. I want lot of capabilities out of it, right? So let's use it a very popular way, which is create React app. So basically this is a way where we can bootstrap our application. Everything like setting up your testing environment and lot other functionality will be provided out of box in terms of performance and building the production level code. So let's quickly see what we've done. We have to do npx create React app. Create React app is basically a boilerplate generation, you can say, command, and out of that we are creating a tic-tac-toe, our first React application, and we will go inside this React app and we will just start our server using npm start or yarn start. Whatever you have in your browser, you can definitely, in your system, you can definitely use it. And once you are done with that, you will see you have this code base available. So this will be available. You have src where you will be writing all your code base in package.js, and where you will be maintaining your code base, you can dependencies basically, and public is where once you finally build your application, you will get the final code inside the public. And this is how your browser will render your application once you start using npm or yarn start. Okay, let's quickly grab a view how to do that. We are going to run build our first application using npx create React app, and we are going to build tic-tac-toe. Very popular and famous in our school time. Let's see what it does. It will install certain dependencies. So okay, I'm going to install 67 packages. Okay, and here are other TypeScript, linting, lot of testing framework library like Jest, testing library, other testing dependencies will be installed in this. Let's hold for a second, we'll see all of them installing over here. Okay, you can say React, React DOM, React scripts, is all of them are installed over here. Okay, and they are testing libraries which are installed, the jest which is installed. Cool. So we are almost done. Okay, now we are going to actually get inside this folder which we created, which is TikTok2, and we will be using a yarn start command. Okay, let's see what will happen. We are actually starting our server. It says, okay, let me start Bootstrap the application, and finally we can see our application is going to boot on port 3003. What happened to it? Good, it should we have to wait, and here we go. Our first React application is launched, and congratulations to everyone whoever is following me. Yeah, so we are done, like we are done with bootstrapping our first React application. Let's move ahead. So let's talk about some core fundamental of React. We have seen there are certain things, we just wanted to know how it internally works. We have gone through certain jargons. Let's know about those jargons. It's a high time, right? So JSX we discussed, right? So JSX is a again syntax extension to the JavaScript. It is declarative, like you don't have to write imperative code where you have to write React.create element and all those things. You have to pass those parameters. No, I want it to be a very simple in a declarative format, where how we generally used to write HTML, right? And it's separate by concerns, like it knows what is a UI and versus the state logic. It separate out the side effects and all those things. So it maintains just the view part of that, no logic, no side effect, nothing. And the best part is, once you write it, the output, the compiled format is actually dependent on the platform on which you want to build for. Like you want to build for web, it will automatically handle accordingly. If you want to build for mobile, it will automatically handle that scenario. So basically internally what it does, it's a consider example, you have React.create element. It has three parts, which is type, props and children. Type is something HTML type. You want to render a h1p section, what you want to render. And props is like a property. If you want to pass a class name, right? If you want to pass certain styles, you want to pass other things to this, you can use this props. And what is actually you are going to render inside this plain text, or you may want to render another element inside that, right? So this can be considered example. This you have a h1 hello world over here, the type is h1, your children is hello world. You don't have props as of now, right? So see how it will actually render. It will render in the form of it will be compiled in the form of h1 null hello world. We can see three parameters which are passed inside the create element, and this is how it actually converts into. So let's talk about a bit complex part. Like we have a div, we have a label as in child, input and button. So inside div we have three child, label, input and button. Label has a child as an enter name, and it has certain properties like class, HTML4, input have a ID, type, these are the properties, and button has a styles as a property. And you can just note it down. You are using some JSX thing, right? Some JavaScript thing is written inside this, which will load the button dynamically over here. Okay, let's see how it will render. So basically you have a parent as in div, and you are having three children, which is label, input and button. Label has a children as an enter name, and input has a, it doesn't have any children. And talking about button, it has a nothing. This is a button text, which is a dynamic part. Talking about a props, so label has class name and HTML4, we can see over here. Similarly input has a ID and type over here, and button has a style over here, we can see. That's a very simple thing, right? And it gives you a lot of capability, where you can see you are writing a plain JavaScript, but you can embed the dynamic part of it. Oh, that's cool. Okay, Before we dive into virtual DOM, let's understand our real DOM, how things work, if there are certain changes in your DOM or CSS property, what all actually happens behind the scene. So you have a HTML and which is converted into using HTML parser, it goes to a DOM tree, it converts into a DOM tree, and your styles actually converts into your style rules. Both of them get combines and become an attachment. Right? Now this attachment is going to render, so it converts into a render tree you can consider is a final thing which is going to be rendered on your browser or your web page. So consider if you have a Facebook like application, you have header, you have side panel, right panel, you have chat application, you have different posts over there. So what browser does generally, so first of all it will do a layout in terms of, you have a header, what is the dimension and where I need to place it, you have a sidebar, you have a chat bar. So all of them, where I need to place, what should be the dimension, in which layer I should place it, all of them is taken care by the layout. Once that layouting is done, then it will do a painting. So it will go and keep on painting the places irrespectively as per the styles provided. Then it will finally display to the user, right? So consider example, if you are writing a plain JavaScript, if you are changing a, say suppose any button, or you are typing certain chat and you are typing enter, you are adding new element inside a DOM, right? In that particular case, again a DOM tree will be converted, style rules will be generated, and finally attachment will be built, again layouting will be done, painting will be done, and display will be done. Oh, it's so complex, it's so costly, right? It's not like you are adding certain DOM inside a DOM and it actually renders as it is, right? So if a lot of activities happening in your web page, it's a damn costly. So how virtual DOM gets a benefit out of that? So it creates a copy of an actual DOM tree, and if there is any change, any sort of change, you can visualize over here, there is a change in this particular DOM node basically. So it does lot of diffing algorithm, lot of other you can say optimization before it actually create a patch in a, you can say batch format, and it actually applies into the real DOM. So it does lot of things. So we'll see what is that lot of thing and how that thing is done. So basically right now we can just consider it has a copy, it checks the nodes which are impacted, and if it knows finally these are the nodes which is impacted, it just applies the patch, and only the critical portion subtree of that particular real DOM will be rendered. Okay, so why, like how it is going to perform such activities, right? So it has the efficient diff algorithm, and on top of it, it uses the batch update operation. It doesn't update every time when there is a user activity, and it also knows the efficient way to update just the subtree. On top of it, it uses the observable, where nodes, each node actually triggers and tells about if there is change instead of doing a dirty check the entire DOM tree. So they are the some key fundas how basically why it is able to achieve these things, right? And how it is able to achieve, let's talk about. So basically if there is any change in any of the node, what it does, it re-renders all the childs beneath that, and how in which fashion it uses the breadth first search basically in order to avoid the re-rendering of its child, because if there is a re-render at a parent level, then obviously its child going to re-render again. Reconciliation is a technique basically how it actually identifies the diff and how it is actually going to apply into your real DOM. So all those creation of your virtual DOM, identifying the differences and applying into the virtual DOM, and the name which is very popular is an algorithm which is React Fiber they use, which is updated in a batch fashion. So it's not like again we doesn't go and apply each on every update there and then. So okay, if you have, let's talk about a component. Like we are talking about component, state, props, these are the very fundamental of, you can say, React. Component you can visualize as a view layer. Like you have a web page, you have header, login, some login and sign up. These are the different components, right? State is something, if each of these component maintains the internal state data model basically are called the state. If something is passed from the parent is called the props. How it looks like, we'll see. So consider example, this is your header, right? And black one is your main application. You get a user information from your parent, your main application into the header. That becomes a props. And you do certain things, maintain your local state in terms of how you want to show. You want to show a button or you want to show the username based on what data is passed from the props. So that is maintained inside your local state. All the activities which you do generally are actually updating your local state or that component state, not the props. Why? And we will discuss about that. Now a component can again contain multiple components, and this particular header component can pass the its own state or props as in props to the its child component. So basically data is driven from parent to child in a props fashion, and each of these component can maintain their own state. As simple as, right? How it looks like, major differences. Let's Props is something which is read only. Whatever you get from your parent, you cannot modify it. Simple thumb rule. State is something, all the activities which are going inside that particular component are updated inside that state. And just to remember, highlight, it is asynchronous in behavior. It's not like you have updated and then the next execution will have the updated value. No, it is async. You can modify it using set state or this dot set state depending on what React version you are using. And yes, so these are the major highlights or key fundamental that you need to keep. Okay, very interesting part is we have seen about the view layer, data models. What are the events handling, right? So event handling in React is done in the same fashion. A small difference is like it provides a synthetic events. Like all the native events are wrapped inside another form of event which is called synthetic event. Uh, why React creates a wrapper on top of it is basically it in order to avoid the differences between the cross browser. So say suppose a particular on blur or on click, all these events may have a different naming convention in different browsers. So it does not want to create the conflict. So in a simple format, it creates a wrapper so that you have to write it once in a simple format, and wherever it is going to trigger depending on even the browser or you can say web app, right? So in web app or mobile app, it will take care of that. Okay, so let's take a small example how it look like and how you have to write. Same in JavaScript, how you used to write. It is on call, on focus in this example, where you are passing a callback. You are passing this callback. Once a person does a focus on this input, this particular callback will be triggered and you will see a focused on input will be console log in your application. Cool. So we are done with our synthetic events as well. So very important thing in order to understand in React, if you understand the life cycle of React, you are pretty much like able to implement a heavy or you can say good applications. Okay, so your life cycle is divided into major three parts. One is mounting, updating, and unmounting. Mounting is something when your particular component gets onboarded onto the viewport. Basically, you can say it gets mount, right? Mounting has certain steps. Like it, first of all, you can provide a certain way to initialize certain values. Like you want to set certain values into your state, local state, right? Then it renders whatever the you want to render inside that component. The rendering is done, then you get a event trigger which is you can manage by component did mount. In case of update, there are certain ways where you can again trigger the re-render, but again basically it re-renders based on say suppose set state or there is a new props which is passed from the parent. And finally it also trigger component did update. Once there is a re-render, rendering is done, it will again update the component did update. And in case of mounting, once your component is going to unmount, a final thing which will be triggered as a component will unmount. So these are the three forms of you can say parts of critical parts of your life cycle is in React. Let's see in more detail if you have to implement this using hooks. So again, hooks is a new thing which you might have heard in React. So let's see what are those and how those are used. So before diving it, let's see this in action. So we talk about we want to initialize certain things, right? So using, there is another method which is provided by React, which is called use state, which is used to bootstrap your initial state, and it provides a method where you can reset it again. So whatever you set it inside a use state as in primary data, it will be available using a message, and if you want to update it, you can update using set message, as simple as. Then we talk about when we are mounting, there is another event that triggers basically lifecycle, which is component did mount. That can be achieved using another method which is provided by React, which is use effect. It takes a callback basically, and this callback is triggered on mount and unmount only in case when this second parameter is passed in as an empty array. So if you pass it as an empty array, then it will be triggered in mount and unmount both. Now if you want to handle certain things when there is a change inside your state, or whenever there is a re-render, right? So if you don't pass any parameter in that particular case, it will automatically take care of any trigger on any update inside your component. The last component will unmount. In this particular case, we can see it is quite similar to what we have for this component did mount, which is this. Just a small difference, you can also do a return of something. What it does, if you return something, it will be called in case of unmounting. So this will be called in case of mount, and this return will be called in case of unmount. So let's see all of this in action. So you have created a basic component, you have set your state, which is with empty string. You have provided a method called set message. You can update your state, which is message state, using a set message, and if there is a mount or unmount, this mount will be called. Again, this, if there is mount and unmount, this mount and unmount will be called based on what is happening. And if there is any update in the you can say your component, then this update console will be called, right? And finally, this is going to return or render this particular element. What is that? I want to render a h1, and what it renders a message or a show text. Message is a state and show is your static word. And what we are going to do, we are providing a handler also, which is called onClick. Once you click on this onClick, it will call a method called set message, and we are passing a new value to it. What is that? Yahoo React finally. So this will update your state, and this is going to re-render again, and your message will be updated. Now you have message, your show won't be available. So try it out, and let me know what do you see and what do you observe in your console. If you face any challenges, I'm here for you. And yeah, that's it from my side. This is Chirag again. So you can find me any of the social network platform using Engineer Chirag. If you like my video, you can like it, subscribe it for my future videos, and don't forget to share it. If you have any questions, any doubt, any concerns, do comment below. And yeah, keep subscribed for my upcoming videos where we'll be creating a basic TikTok application. We will be writing a code from scratch, and we will be having a full-fledged TikTok application. That's it. Thank you.